Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Talk of the Boat. I'm your host, Robert, with Team Yazbek at Coldwell Banker. Here today with Kevin Booth, Airport Director at Yampa Valley Regional Airport and retired Air Force Colonel of 30 years.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you for your service, first of all.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Excited to hear about the great things going on at Yampa Valley Regional Airport. We are less than, when this post will be less than a week away from direct flights coming in. So timely. So appreciate you coming on. I know you're busy right now.
We are, but excited also for the season to start.
Heck yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you and how'd you find Steamboat and how long you been here?
Okay. Yeah. Steamboat kind of found me.
Okay.
So I retired from the Air Force right at the end of 2013 and started a job search, kind of figure out what I wanted to do, and had some background in airport management, so went that direction. And took me a while. Was looking at down in the metro area. Was living in Colorado Springs. Looked at the airport there. Actually looked at the Rocky Mountain Metro Airport.
Okay.
Was waiting on an interview there when the phone rang for an interview up here.
Interesting.
So never been to Steamboat. I'd been stationed in Colorado Springs for a couple of years. So got my resume together, filled out an application, came up and took a look in November of what would have been 2014.
Okay.
And interviewed in December, and next thing you know, I was up here working in January. So
very nice. Are you a skier?
I am. I wasn't much of a skier, but living in a ski town, especially this one, it seemed like it made sense. So my wife and I have both become season pass holders for the last 5 years.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good deal. So happy with your decision to land in Steamboat?
Yeah, very happy. I got home from that first trip of just dropping off my resume and my application, and told my wife, "You're gonna love it.
Yeah.
Keep your fingers crossed that this works
Exactly.
out. It's a great town.
That's
and
awesome.
a great airport, actually.
Yeah.
Because I did make a beeline. I came up, went through town. Before I even dropped off my application, I wanted to see the airport. So drove out the 23 miles to the airport and walked through the whole terminal unescorted, and got a lay of the land, and then was very impressed with the terminal even then.
Wow.
And then came back and started the process.
That's great. I've always been blown away at the airport too. So I'm real excited for this. I'm an aspiring pilot, and love the small airport and the capacity and where we can go from Hayden for the prices we get. It just seems incredible to me. Always has. So good. Well, so you're coming up on your 9th winter season as airport director. Tell us a little bit about the journey and some of your responsibilities as director.
Sure. So there's 2 seasons at our airport. So we have a busy winter season, 6 airlines coming in with service to now 16 different airports, 15 different cities. And that's grown since I took the job 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, in the off season, we're typically making improvements. So we haven't had an off season yet when we haven't done something to improve the airport, and so that, leaning a little bit on my background in construction, that's helped me handle the construction projects, of which there have been many. So the things that, maybe were a little different than what I'd done before was, I hadn't been in the military. I hadn't dealt with the airlines really specifically, rental cars, shuttle buses, things like that go with a commercial airport. So that was, a learning process for me. It didn't take long because I started right in the middle of our busiest part of the year in January. But that, and dealing with the staffs that go along with those, my staff is relatively small. In the wintertime, we plus up, so we add temporary workers in the wintertime to get up to 80. But airport writ large, we have 500 employees out there.
Wow.
They don't all work for me, but they work with me. So they're all part of that team. And we're actually getting them all together tomorrow. Ski Corporation's coming out to give us a what's new on the mountain.
Oh, great.
We field a lot of questions as passengers come in for the first time.
Yeah.
And I want my staff to know what's going on because, it's just a fact of life that most of our travelers in the wintertime are here to enjoy the mountain and the town. And so we do that every year. That's on deck tomorrow. So
That's
I'm
great.
excited to have it.
And are you guys at the expo today at the Grand?
We're not. I did it a couple
Okay.
years ago, but we've actually had a very successful off-season hiring campaign. I credit that to a number of things, not least of which is the county's made great strides in kind of bringing our wages up to make us competitive
Yeah.
with some of the other employers that we compete with for business.
Sure.
And we draw a lot of our workforce from Craig and Hayden, so
Right.
we're a shorter commute for those folks. And if we pay
Yes.
a competitive wage, which we do, with benefits, and a lot of them on the full-time side are benefited positions, we've done very well. I mean, we struggled last year.
Yeah.
We were understaffed last year, made it through the season, but worked our folks pretty hard, and we're looking much better this season. So,
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
You don't hear that in many
No.
industries right now, so that's
No.
good news.
Yeah.
And yeah, I never thought of that. That's a good advantage to be close to Hayden and Craig there. That's excellent. So you've got some incredible work experience and life experience, 30 years, in the Air Force. How did your previous work experiences shape your role at Yampa Valley Regional?
Yeah. So, like I said, when I was just graduating from college with an engineering degree, a mechanical engineering degree, I went to work for an international construction company. And of the 6 years that I spent with them, 3 of them were spent building an airport. So I was there day one,
There you go.
in charge of building the camp where we were going to live in this overseas location in Israel, actually.
Wow.
And then stayed right till the day we handed the keys off to the Israelis. So A to Z, soup to nuts, good, real experience on everything you need to build and maintain an airport. So I lean very heavily on that, and it's helped me tremendously, actually, with this job and with a lot of elements in my Air Force job.
Sure.
And then in the latter parts of my career in the Air Force, I was given command of a squadron that in Germany that ran an air base, right? So my squadron ran the control tower and the radar control center and the weapons shop, and then all things to do with the airfield itself. So all of that maintenance, everything from clearing snow, which we had a lot of in that part of Germany,
Yeah.
to just the day-to-day operations of coming and going of a very, very busy airport, because we had a full wing of fighters operating out of that base.
Wow.
That, and then later on, I was up in Alaska in an assignment there, and we had most of our assets were right there in Anchorage, but then we had 2 forward operating locations, and so I was in charge of maintaining those facilities too. So all of that came up in my interview process as experience in running an airport, and like I said before, the gaps in my resume, if you will, were with the commercial side of airlines and rental cars and shuttle buses, but
Right.
that was a fairly quick study in getting up to speed on that.
I bet. Yeah. And I mean, the experience you have, dwarfs that experience you didn't have, it sounds like. So they're lucky to have you,
Thank you.
right? To say the least.
Yeah.
I mean, it just sounds like a great match. Somebody
Yeah.
like yourself and that airport that already had such a unique, positioning and
Yeah. The other part
strength.
of my experience that I haven't mentioned, it was just that for the majority of my 30 years in the Air Force, I was actually flying. So I was a pilot. And that has paid off tremendously as well, because, with the clearances that I have and the badge that I carry at the airport, I can literally walk out to a commercial airplane after they've deboarded. And if there's an issue with the airplane, I can go into the cockpit and talk the talk with pilots.
Yeah.
How was your approach? Anything about this airport and landing here, because a lot of them haven't been here before.
Yeah.
Anything we can do better, anything I can do to get you guys turned around more quickly, and that sort of thing. And I have some credibility. I don't go in and tell them my resume, but I can go in and just say, hey, as a pilot myself, I had a couple questions about what I heard over the radio, that sort of thing. And that's been very helpful. And then I can take some of that information that I'm getting straight from the source and come in, and if there is a delay or there's something going on with that aircraft or that departure, then they share that with me. I always ask them, can I share that with your passengers? Because, they were supposed to leave an hour ago and they're still in the gate.
Right.
Sure. And so that communication goes a long way to alleviating the stress of traveling, especially if you're trying to get out in the wintertime and your airplane's late or something like
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. Is that fairly unique for someone with your experience to be in that kind of position at an
yeah,
airport?
I mean, I know most of the airport directors,
Yeah.
with the exception of the DIA director. I've met him, but I don't
Okay.
really know him.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of another one that is a pilot.
Has Air
has
Force
that
background or
background.
pilot, yeah,
Yeah.
experience. Wow. Well, that's incredible. This is getting better and better. I love it. So we're about a month in or so, a little less, to the ski season being open.
Yep.
Or ski area being open. So how have operations been so far this year, and what can we expect for the upcoming season?
Actually, it's feels like we've had more snow early than normal
Oh,
for
yeah.
us, right?
We have.
So
At least in the last couple
yeah,
decades.
I mean, my guys worked a long day yesterday.
Oh
So
yeah, it was a big snow day.
yeah, we were out there, and I say they were out there 4 a.m. Because of the snow that had occurred through the night, and getting stuff ready for early departures. And then we have an airplane that's scheduled in every night at about 7:30 arrival, and so it essentially snowed all day, at least in Hayden.
Yeah.
And so they were working on clearing that runway and clearing the apron and doing all that all day.
All day.
We cycle them in and out. We try and get them rest, send some of them home and bring them back, that sort of thing. But it was a long day for us, and it felt like midwinter, even though it's still fall.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Is there such a thing as a powder day for you guys? Do you get to ski in the morning?
No,
never. There's no powder clause.
No, but we're 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Yeah.
And in the wintertime, my deputy and I tag team the weekends. So my normal work week is Sunday through Thursday.
Okay.
And so Saturday's our busiest day. So often I'm at the airport on Saturday, even though it's my day off.
Oh, gotcha.
But Fridays I try and protect for being up in the mountain.
Get up
first
there.
thing. Yeah.
Perfect.
Whether it's a powder day or not.
Yeah,
That's my
exactly.
ski day.
You got to do it.
Yeah.
I'll be pulling for some Friday powder days for you this season. That's great. So tell us a little about the recent improvements at the airport, and what more do you have in store for the future? And
Sure.
to segue into that, I feel like it's constantly expanding and growing since I've been here 20 years ago. It blows me away every few times I fly out. It looks totally different. So
the most recent improvements, and we just finished up here at the end of September, was on our commercial apron where we park up to 9 commercial aircraft at a time. We had essentially two de-ice pads, so 2 places where an airplane could be pushed back to, and then we can treat it with glycol before it takes off, which is a safety requirement. And so often on a Saturday or a Wednesday or a Sunday, which are our 3 busiest days, you'll have competition for those spots. So first one to the de-ice pad gets de-iced and gets to leave.
Right.
Others wait for the de-ice pad. So
sure.
So this year we spent about $7 million and built 2 more de-ice pads. So we essentially doubled our de-icing capability.
Great.
So very exciting news for us. It's not the sexiest of construction projects. It's concrete with drainage and that sort of thing. But ultimately, from an operations perspective, it is really going to streamline us getting airplanes off the ramp and in the air and on their way this winter. So
that's half the battle, right? I'm sure. I mean, just the flow through there. So that's most recent.
That was this season.
Okay.
We had some other projects. We have a project that's still ongoing. So we're in the process of building a car wash, of all things. A lot of airports have them to be used by the rental car facilities.
Okay.
So in the past, our rental cars, you bring one in from the end of your trip. They'd have to drive it into Hayden, find a place to wash it, and then bring it back up to the airport to fuel. And so we're going to finish up here in January or early February a car wash with 3 bays in it. Great. So our rental cars will only have to go a quarter of a mile to fuel and wash and be ready to go.
Great.
Instead of going down the hill into Hayden and back out. And so it's going to reduce kind of their workload, probably reduce the number of staff they have to have.
Sure.
and hopefully it's going to increase their inventory.
Mhm.
So if they can turn cars more quickly, then maybe they can have more cars in inventory, because we were short last season.
Okay.
In the rental car inventory.
Yeah, yeah, I've noticed that. So that's great. Yeah, that'll be big deal too for tourists and everybody.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So those are probably our two biggest projects, totaling about $11 million this summer.
Okay, perfect. And then you're just quoted in the paper yesterday, I think,
Yep.
talking about a $30 million future expansion. What's
Yeah,
on the,
very
what's on the
excited.
horizon?
Yeah, and over the 8 years, it's become evident to me that our terminal, you know, in the wintertime on certain days can be undersized, right?
Yeah.
So it's congested. We realize that, and we need to expand to allow us the ability, if more flights want to come in the wintertime,
Mhm.
or essentially to handle what we have now in the wintertime on those busy days. And so it's a project that requires a lot of forethought. And so we're doing that. We're doing our due diligence now with the help of the FAA. We've got our architects and engineers doing what's called a terminal area plan. It's about a 1.5 year project. We've got about 6 months left to go on it.
Okay.
And that's going to come back. It looks at projections. So, how many passengers are we going to be handling 20 years from now?
Mhm.
So we're looking that far down the road.
Wow.
What are the trends in aviation in general?
Mhm.
And the trends are good for the aviation world. We've kind of recovered from COVID, if you will.
Sure.
We never really saw COVID. We had kind of the negative or the opposite effect in Hayden to COVID.
Yeah.
Our numbers went up,
Right.
Because people wanted to come to an environment like this.
Yep. Like all of Steamboat, basically. Yeah.
So, so they're going to come back to me in June of 2023 and say, "Here's what we think you ought to do, right?
Okay.
And here's about what it will cost." And then in between now and then, we're going to have some public meetings. So we're going to get some input from the public.
Great.
We've already gotten input from all of our business partners, right? So what do they think we need? Everybody from TSA to our rental cars to our shuttle bus companies. Where are the hotspots, if you will, in the terminal now? The TSA checkpoint is probably too constrained. Our area, once you go through TSA, is too small for the number of airlines, the number of people we have.
Mhm.
So more gates
Yeah.
once you go through TSA. We hope to expand kind of the snack bar area back there, so you have more options once you get back there. If you're delayed, and
Sure.
you're back there for a few hours, you have some more options and some more space. Our ticketing lobby needs to be expanded. Our baggage claim needs to be expanded.
Wow.
All of those are, to my mind, I can kind of lay out. I know we need them, but
Mhm.
I'm not an architect I am an engineer, but I'm not an architect. So I can't really tell you the best way to lay that out and the
Right.
best way to spend that money. And so that's what we're paying them to tell us.
That's great.
So 2023 June, we'll have that in hand with their recommendations, and then we'll start into the design process. And it'll probably be 2025, really, spring of 2025, when we'll probably start one of 2 phases
Okay.
of construction. And if I had to guess, we're going to expand to the east, right?
Okay.
So we've got 2 older hangars next to the terminal,
Mhm.
and that's where we can grow. We'll demolish those
Got
and
it.
grow that direction.
Yeah.
But the terminal area plan is going to look, it's a holistic look. We're looking at parking, we're looking at drop off. Can we make that more efficient? Is, where the shuttle buses park, is it big enough? If we have more passengers, there's going to be more shuttle buses.
Yeah.
All of that is being looked at.
Wow.
And some of the projects that we have on the books, like next year, we're moving our employee parking and we're building a new parking lot for them over where the rental cars are parked now.
Okay.
And then we're building new rental car ones. And we just know already that before we can expand the terminal and put into effect the recommendations, there's some things that we just already know we have to do.
Right.
And we're starting to do them.
Moving forward with those. Yep. Wow, that's incredible. I mean, I love the airport. I'm blown away. I've never waited in lines that I can recall. I guess I've just been lucky and not flying on those busiest days of the week. So the fact that you guys are growing and expanding, and having that forethought is incredible. Because to me, it's one of the most, smooth, seamless, easiest airports to fly in and out of ever.
Well, I should mention too that that's the terminal area plan.
Mm-hmm.
We're also doing what's called a general aviation development plan simultaneously. So we got one grant to fund both efforts, both being done by the same engineers and architects.
Okay.
But the General Aviation Development Plan, when we were talking about private aviation earlier, on the east end of the runway, about 3 years ago, we moved our fixed base operator down there. So all the private jets and airplanes come in down there. They used to
Okay.
come in on our apron, and we now have used that apron to do de-icing and to park commercial airplanes.
Right.
So that gave us the ability to expand immediately when they moved.
Okay.
So they built a $10 million facility down there in 2019. So it wasn't that long ago.
Wow.
This last summer, we put out a request for proposals to develop 3 acres that haven't been developed down there. They have access to the runway. It's really prime property. And we got 2 proposals. We selected one of those, and they're going to start building in probably April. And they're going to build 9 hangars down there.
Wow.
And that's part of the GA development. But then outside of what is now the fence that encloses the airfield, the county owns 25 acres. It's a 37-acre plot, 25 of which is usable for aviation. And this next summer, we've got about $1.5 million project to reroute a county road around that acreage, reroute our fence around that acreage, and reroute the power lines. And then we will level that whole area. So we'll prep it for development, and then we'll go out for RFP. So we have, like I said, 25 acres in there that we're going to put out and go, if you want to build it, tell us, here's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
We'd like some businesses in there. We'd like some good paying jobs to come along with this.
Sure.
Not just a hangar farm, but we'd like to see some aviation related businesses in there.
Great.
And I think there's demand for it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's folks out there that are waiting for us to do that work so that they can make their proposals. And that'll be developed over time. Right?
Okay.
It won't all happen at once. But pretty excited about that as well.
Yeah.
We'd really like to see, in conjunction with our partners in Hayden, we'd really like to see more jobs at the airport,
right,
that are aviation related. And if it's inside the fence, it has to be aviation related.
Okay.
So, but I don't just want, I'll take whatever we can get, right? But in a perfect world, we want to see some businesses in there. We want to see maybe a hangar. You bring your airplane in and they do something to it, whether they're working on the engine or the avionics or they're painting it, whatever that might be.
Right.
We're definitely going to have some incentives to attract those kind of businesses.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
Good deal. So we've got direct flights starting in, less than a week from when this gets published.
Yep.
December 17th? 15th, December 15th. So we got direct flights from 16 different locations or 16 different airports.
Right.
Starting up real soon here. What can we expect? What are you guys doing to prepare? And how's that look?
Like I said, we've staffed up. So I just talked to incoming employees yesterday, and we're doing our kickoff meeting tomorrow. And that's for everybody. That's for all the employees at the airport to get everybody up to speed. We've got some new service, right? So Southwest is introducing direct flights to Nashville this season, Saturdays only, but that's kind of typical for when an airline starts a new service. They just kind of start with maybe once or twice a week, and then if it's successful, they increase it. So very excited to add Nashville to the list.
And Southwest has been with us not long, right?
This will be their third season.
Years, yeah.
Their third season with us.
So this will be their first non-COVID season with us.
Yep.
And how many other airports are they flying out of?
So they're flying to Dallas, Nashville, and to Denver.
Okay.
Those are their 3.
Gotcha.
And that's why there's 16 cities or 16 airports in 15 cities.
15 cities.
We go to Dallas, Fort Worth, and then Dallas Love.
Okay.
Field. So there's 2 different airports in Dallas. And American flies daily flights into Dallas.
Okay.
So we have 11 daily flights all season. So every day from start to finish. And then a couple of the airlines do additional flights that aren't every day, right? So weekends and maybe midday.
Sure.
Alaska's that way. But yeah, I think it looks to be a very busy season. It's a little different. One of our airlines that's back, I think, for their 5th season is JetBlue.
Okay.
And they're still flying to Boston and Fort Lauderdale, but they're doing it a little differently this year. They found that most of their ridership was coming in February and March. And so they were one of the airlines that would do like Wednesdays and Saturdays to those two cities. And this season, they're going to fly only in February and March, right? So they're two busiest.
Okay.
But they're going to fly every day. Not
Wow.
every day to both cities, but like 3 days to Fort Lauderdale and 4 days to Boston.
Okay.
So we're gonna not see JetBlue for the first month and a half, but then when they come on, it's going to be a daily flight for them to one of those two cities. Yeah.
Okay.
So
interesting.
It is an interesting twist.
Yeah.
For us.
Still have direct flights to San Diego.
Yeah, Alaska flies to San Diego and to Seattle.
Okay.
Right, and they're kind of a Saturday, Sunday, Wednesday, or Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on the city. Yeah,
that's one that we rely on a lot.
Is it?
Yeah, we're from Florida, so my wife needs to get to the beach, a couple times a year for mental health, and that's the quickest, easiest, fairly warm beach location.
Yeah, I have taken that flight myself, both to Seattle, where I have a sister, and to San Diego a couple of times, where my oldest daughter lives. So, so
we were excited when that got added a handful of years ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah. All right, so you guys are staffed up and ready to go.
We are ready.
Excellent. Yeah. I need to get you out of here so you can get to work. I'm just kidding. All right, so tell us a little bit about the trends in commercial aviation that we were talking about.
Yeah, so a few years ago, the trend, at least at our airport with the commercials, was they were sort of downsizing to more of a mid-sized aircraft, more efficient. There's a Brazilian aircraft called the Embraer that flies a 70-seater. It's a really nice airplane. We still see it, and it was kind of the trend was going that direction. And then a couple of years ago with COVID, that seemed to reverse, and so we're now seeing more of what we call mainline. So these are the 150 to 170 seat aircraft.
Okay.
We can accommodate them easily.
Yeah.
Based on our runway length and that sort of thing. But that's what we're seeing. And so we're seeing that upsizing, the bigger aircraft can carry more weight, not just in passengers, but in cargo.
Okay.
And so obviously when people come here, they bring skis and boards and boots and things like that.
Oh yeah.
And so you don't want to limit, yourself. And so I think the airlines have realized that that mainline Airbus 320 and 737 from the Boeing fleet work really well here. And so we're seeing a lot of those.
Okay.
So we've expanded our ability to park those, right? And so we have 6 parking spots that are sized for that big an airplane.
Okay.
3 for the smaller ones. And probably next year we'll expand from 6 to 7 or 8. And at some point after we do the terminal area plan and do that expansion, I'd like to see all of our spots be able to handle the bigger airplanes.
Gotcha.
Right? Because you always put a smaller airplane in the envelope of a big one.
Right.
But you can't do the opposite.
Yeah.
So that's been one of the trends. I'm happy to announce that we're now mixing sustainable aviation fuel. Is being brought in, and we're mixing that with the fuel that we get out of Wyoming. And so we're doing our part. We're also joining an alliance of kind of green airports where you can actually buy offsets through this organization, and we're going to sponsor that through our airport to allow, folks that want to do that can buy those carbon offsets as part of their ticket price.
Oh, okay. Sort of excellent.
So I'm excited about those trends.
Forgive my ignorance, but what's sustainable fuel?
Yeah, so it's a lot of it's plant-based.
Okay.
Right. And the airlines are trying to go to this, and they're trying to produce it in quantities where it's competitive with jet fuel. And they're getting there, right? So more and more. So even a small regional like us, seeing that flowing in weekly, we just got a shipment yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's we dump it right in with the other stuff, but it's just nice to know that at least a portion of every gallon that's put in the airplanes in Hayden is sustainable.
Wow,
right?
that's
great. That's the trend. We'll see more of that.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. There's also trends, and we're doing this as part of our terminal area plan for EVs. So, and when I say EVs, I'm talking about both air vehicles and ground vehicles.
Wow.
So part of our planning is where can we charge rental cars, electric rental cars?
Sure.
Where can our employees charge their electric rental cars? And then where can our paying passengers that are in paid parking charge there. So that'll all be coming in the next year or two
Perfect.
as we get through this. But we're also looking at what if it's called advanced air mobility, these electric air vehicles. But I would say it's not too distant future before we see air taxis.
Okay.
And so you might be taking a shuttle bus that looks a lot different that you walk out
Yeah.
to, you jump on, they put your skis in a rack on the outside, and this hovercraft gets up, and
Yeah.
and transits you to a landing space here in Steamboat. Sounds a little bit like the Jetsons, but
Yeah.
it's not that far off.
Right.
They're flying these things today, and there's some places in Europe that are actually using them. So
That's incredible.
but we want to be ahead of that curve, and when we
Yeah.
do make our big changes, we want to be able to accommodate that.
Sure.
Whether it's at our facility or down at our FBO,
Okay.
Aviation. Yeah.
Perfect. And those are drone style.
They would probably be piloted. Yeah,
Right,
like
piloted
drone style, but
drones.
vertical takeoff and landing.
Yeah.
Right. And they'd probably follow the road into town, and we'd have to figure out where they drop off in town, kind
Yeah.
of like the buses do. So whether it's the Stock Bridge or someplace else.
Yeah. That's great. And yeah, I've been seeing that a little bit, right? And man-powered drones, for recreation or, business. Do you think those will kind of hit in recreationally individual use first, or will they hit
That's a good
uses
question.
like that, commercial uses first?
I think they're developing side by side, and so which
Yeah.
one comes up first? I don't know. I think there's a high demand for that 8 to 10 passenger short duration flight.
Mhm.
So I think you might see it actually commercially
Commercial
available before
operation
you and I
first.
can buy one.
Wow.
I'd love to commute to the airport from my house.
It'd be
in London.
incredible. Absolutely. I like it. That's awesome. So, all right. So we talked about 16 flights now, and there's potential for some more coming up.
There are. Yeah. And
Can you share any of those with us?
Sure. I mean, I'll throw out some numbers. We broke records in 2021 in that we handled about 300,000 passengers. Right?
Wow.
And so that broke by maybe 20% anything we'd ever done in our history. And you have to go back to 2007, 2008 to get to those numbers. So we hadn't seen those kind of numbers. Well, this year in 2022, we're going to do 400,000.
Wow.
Right? So 33% more.
That's huge.
And we're projecting kind of to flatten out in 2023.
Okay.
Unless, and so this is kind of what you were leading to.
Yeah.
There's opportunity right now to expand the summer air service. And so one of the byproducts of Southwest coming in here, 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, actually, was they came in, they were successful, they liked it, and they stayed all year because they originally said, we're coming in for the winter season like most of our airlines.
Gotcha.
And then they extended and they stayed year round. And so that created competition with United, who was our sole carrier year round. And it brought ticket prices down. It brought options up as far as making connections and things.
Yeah.
And so they've been a game changer. So a lot of that growth and those numbers that I'm mentioning is in the off season. So spring, summer, and fall, our numbers went way up. We stayed high and got even higher in the winter, but that's where we saw the big growth. And so as part of this terminal area plan, we actually had consultants that said, here's some markets where we think, you could easily, talk to the airlines and convince them that this would be a good business decision. And a lot of them are, that they've mentioned, none of this has been contracted yet, but they mentioned, obviously we have a lot of folks that visit the Valley from Texas.
Yeah.
And so Austin, Houston, and Dallas, we're like, immediately talk to the airlines there and see if they'd be interested in doing summer flights.
Okay.
And then the other one that I've coveted since I got here is Phoenix, right? And so, obviously Southwest flies a lot of flights out of Phoenix.
Okay.
They fly to Dallas. United flies to Houston, right?
Sure.
And American flies to Dallas as well. So all those opportunities are there. Those are things that my partners at the Ski Corporation are working on as we speak.
Okay.
They do have some funding allocated to support that through the local marketing district and the Steamboat ski area. So we'll see.
That's
I've got my fingers crossed, but I definitely see that, and that's kind of a differentiator between ourselves and some of our peer airport competitors. Vail, Eagle, Aspen, Jackson Hole. And if you look, our passenger counts aren't. We're pretty close to Vail, Eagle. we're behind Aspen and Jackson Hole, but a lot of that is because they definitely have developed summer air service.
Oh, okay.
So both Aspen and Jackson Hole have more passengers coming in there in the summertime than they do in the winter. Whether we want that or not is not my
Wow.
decision to make, but
Interesting.
we certainly have capacity at the airport to support that.
Yeah.
If we go that direction, and that's where we could definitely see some growth. Now,
That's
the terminal area plan will allow us to grow winter flights
As
we
well.
want to do that as
Right.
well. But today we could expand service in
a
the
lot of room.
summertime if we came in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, beautiful. So we talked about some of the ways that the airport's special and whatnot. I know it's one of the most capable airports I've always heard in the Rocky
is.
Mountain region. But what's your take on why it's special and what sets it apart from other similar airports?
So number one is the length of our runway. So we have a 10,000-foot runway, which is phenomenal for a mountain resort airport, like a regional airport like ours.
Yeah.
So longer runway than any of the three competitors that I mentioned before.
Okay.
Right. And so that's very helpful. In Northwest Colorado, we're one of only three, and the only one that's at a mountain resort, right, that has that length. And it makes us special for the FAA as well. So they're very aware of our capability as an airport.
Sure.
It gives abilities for airplanes from all over should the weather turn bad in Denver or Colorado Springs.
Right.
Airplanes can divert into Hayden.
Yeah.
And they do.
I bet.
So that makes us special in their eyes. The airlines like it because it's safe to take off and land on that length of a runway.
Right.
And then the other thing is just, we were lucky enough to get that piece of land out there by Hayden. Now granted it's 23 miles outside of Steamboat, but on a really well maintained highway.
Right.
So it's not a bad commute. I do it every day.
No.
And
straight shot.
Not bad at all.
Yeah.
But what it gets us is in 23 miles, you're away from the high terrain, right? So high terrain is a challenge for aviators around airports. So if you have high terrain off the end of the runway, you have a climb gradient that you have to meet, which increases the requirements on the aircraft that you fly and the weights that they can take off and land at.
Okay.
It makes the challenge greater for landing in bad weather, right? Because you have to stay above that high terrain and then get down. And
right.
So we have essentially no terrain to the west of us. And then all of our approaches and departures to the east actually are a dog leg that goes southeast, and it avoids the high terrain. So, and even the high terrain we have to the east of us is not significantly high. It's not a mountain, it's a hill.
Yeah.
Right. So we enjoy lower minimums for our instrument approaches, which, to the average viewer just means that our weather can be worse and your commercial pilot can still land. Right. And take off. So that gives us a tremendous advantage over a lot of our competitor airports.
Yeah.
Or peer airports.
Sure. Right. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I mean, I've always heard that we've been one of the most capable in this region, Yeah. And now I understand why. I never really knew the details. Yeah. Well, that's great. Anything else you want to share with us about the upcoming season here?
No, we just look forward to seeing folks. As I tell my staff every year, and I will say again tomorrow when I have the whole airport staff in front of me, it's a great place to work. It's very upbeat. 99% of the people that are getting on and off airplanes either are looking forward to having a great time here, or just had a great time and they're in a great mood. So it's nice to be around people like that, even during COVID. Right? Yeah. And we were all masked up and doing all the right protocols and things out there. And by the way, we've continued those things. So none of the protocols other than the mask wearing went away. So we did specialized training on disinfection. We bought specialized equipment to do that disinfection. And anecdotally, I would say that our staff had less illness during COVID than we ever had in the past. And I look back and say that had to do with the disinfection procedures that we used. So So we've continued all of that. We continue to train all our staff with that, and we are nightly using, EVIS machines on all the public areas. Right.
Great.
So that's going to continue regardless of whether COVID's with us or not. Anymore. So, yeah. So I mean, it's just a great place to work and a great environment, and it's just good being around all of the families and stuff especially around Christmas time.
Yeah.
It's a blast being out there and seeing people dressed up and coming in and knowing they're going to have a great time
Yeah.
here. So it's
Oh,
fun to be
that-
a part of this community, and even the Hayden community. You know, we're a big
Mhm.
part of them. Like I said, a lot of our employees come from that part of the county. So
Sure.
yeah, very much looking forward to a great season.
Love it. That's incredible, man. Appreciate the, the optimism and the upbeat attitude and everything. That's great.
Yeah.
And that's one of the great things about living in Steamboat
It
too.
is.
Yeah. You're there when people are coming in and going out, and that's kind of how it is to live here too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's, a lot of people are on vacation having a good time when they're in Steamboat. So
Yep.
that's incredible. Well, thank you for all your hard work, and
Sure.
appreciate you coming out and spending some time
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Talk of the Boat. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Talk of the Boat. If you enjoy this content, please subscribe on whatever platform you're viewing, like, and share with somebody else you think might enjoy it. We'd really appreciate that. Also, if you have any real estate related questions that you'd like us to answer on the air, please send those to us by email, text, or direct message. And as always, if you have any real estate questions or needs that we can help you with, please reach out. Thank you.